Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can hear me? Okay. Today's session is about real estate and property management. I think you all know by now that IFMA has a more comprehensive outlook on facility management than maybe what many of you are used to. Many of you believe that it's only about engineering job, about just maintaining facilities. But through the last few sessions, Talal, you can't hear me? You can all hear me, guys?
Yes,
I can hear you.
hear you.
Yes.
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 Okay, so yeah, it's more than just about maintaining the facility. Operations maintenance is just one aspect of it. And facility maintenance, it also includes facilities. So it's just like we said that the definition of facility management is a multidisciplinary aspects which come for the purpose of securing the operational of the built environment. So usually when we're talking about facilities, we're not only talking about mechanical equipment and services. We're talking about property. We're talking about real estate. And real estate, as you know, is very valuable. Real estate is very expensive. Real estate is a very important asset for the landlord or for the organization which owns it or utilizes it. So that's why this module. So for most organizations, especially those who own their facilities, the investment tied to real estate, so there's a huge amount of money being tied to real estate. And that amount is second only to staff payroll. Ultimately, an organization, whether it owns or leases facilities, must provide the right environment for conducting their core business operations on a cost-effective and a best value basis. There are several factors that affect the real estate decisions, whether to purchase, whether to sell, whether to move, whether to acquire more properties, whether to divest shares, and so on. So there are internal and external factors. Internal factors are like the organizational image. So the organizational image, if I'm a luxury brand, I mentioned previously the example of, let's say, Al Fardan here, and there's an organizational image that I have to upkeep. If I go and purchase a property in a place where it's less than the image that I'm going to portray, that really doesn't serve the purpose. Similarly, Google, let's say, if they want to come and open an office in Doha, I don't think that they're going to go to an office which is more traditional in design and has golden all over it. So organizational image is an important factor in deciding on real estate. The business life cycle, actually we're going to be looking into the details of these items, but the business life cycle, where are we as an organization? If I'm just an organization which just started, I just made a startup, I'm not going to go and buy invest in acquiring buildings and making them my offices. It really doesn't make sense. Maybe if I'm a growing organization and I have extra cash on hand, I will go and invest in real estate. The life cycle costing, again, where are we in terms of the life cycle costing? If I'm gonna go and rent, I wanna make a factory and I know that I'm gonna be utilizing it for the next 30 to 50 years. So maybe rather than, and in a place where rents are high, maybe it's better that I develop it rather than buy it. So that's why you see many companies in the new industrial area, they went and built their own facilities. Investment analysis. Again, this is an investment. You're fixing a lot of assets in that. So it's an investment. Is it an investment that I want to make, or I better invest in the business? Maybe I better invest in equipment. Maybe no, it's a good idea to invest in this. And the intended use, is it going to be for my use? We will go into all of the details of this. External factors, so like the internal factors, which are related to the organization itself, there are external factors. What are these external factors? One of them is the economic cycle. Like now, if you look at the economy is a little bit in a shrinkage mode. And in a shrinkage mode, the decision to invest in real estate is double-edged. Some can say that we are here for the long term, and this is the right time to invest in real estate. And I've heard it from very big business people here, that they believe that it's the right time to develop because they can do things cheaply. Others might say, no, that my business is low. I don't know for the next 5 years if I'm going to have a cash flow. I might be shrinking down, that I will not even be able to pay the mortgage, so better I stay away from it. The age of the property development. So where is the property and what age it is? Is it really attractive for me to purchase? Is it going to appreciate, or it's already in a depreciating curve, and from now on, whoever is going to buy, it's going to be losing money? The cyclical market conditions, highest and best use, we'll see the definitions of those. Government regulations, simply, for example, a foreign company wasn't able to purchase real estate here in Qatar until recently and in limited areas only. Standards and the cost of money. Standards and regulations that dictate certain use of properties. And the cost of money. What does the cost of money mean? The cost of money means that usually when I go and buy a property, most companies will go and buy it on a mortgage. They don't utilize their own money. So if the mortgage rates are very high, if the mortgage rates don't make sense, let's say, I know there are some countries where the mortgage rates can be up to 20%. So what kind of business you're going to be running that will compensate for that? So this is ridiculous. Whereas in other countries where the cost of money is very low, for example, now the cost of money in the States is very, very low. You can go and get a loan for 1%, 2%, something like that. The Fed rates are, the federal bank rates are almost close to zero. So these are all all at once are factors, whether internal or external, that affect real estate decisions. We're going to be looking more into the detail of them. So the internal factors, organizational image. Any organization typically invests a great deal of time and resources to influence the perceptions and opinions that the stakeholder and the general public have about its products and services. See, the organizational image and the organizational brand for the big organizations are even more real estate. What do you mean by real estate, Oliver? What does real estate mean? Property, whether buildings, whether offices, real estate. You don't know what's real estate? Real estate is buildings, properties, lands. This is what real estate means. As I was saying, that for those organizations, the big organization, the brand is more valuable than even all the assets that they have, the image that they have, and they will not do anything to tarnish it. Any brand you can think of, whether it's Starbucks, Google, Nike, Prada, there is a lot of value in these brands. These brands have been built over years, and if they want to go and sell the brand alone, it's going to be in billions of dollars. So it's something that drives the people there. So if you go to a coffee shop, one is branded Starbucks, the other one isn't a branded Starbucks, you're more likely to go towards a branded one. Yes, Ahmad.
Excuse me, Mr. Ba, is land and agriculture, for instance, if I take a land and I cultivate it with crops and yield, it's also included in real estate, or it is another category?
Here we're talking about built environments, Ahmed. Okay,
And
so
agriculture, no cultivation or something like that.
this is not, it can cover it, but this is not the main area for our discussion.
Not the main core.
Maybe you have facilities, you're running the facilities of a farm, let's say, but this is not the farm has no built environment, the farm, right?
Okay, and for instance, like solar energy for the what's called in Arabic soap or something like a greenhouse or something like that.
Greenhouse is not a built environment.
Okay, so it's not the main core, yeah.
Huh?
Thank you. Not the main core. Agriculture and cultivating this is not the main core of the real estate.
We're talking about real estate, properties. We're talking about offices. We're talking about businesses, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
There may be a factory in a farm, let's say a packaging factory, which you're doing the maintenance for it. This falls under what we're talking about. And maybe also, and these decisions will also apply to it. So let's say if you are a big agricultural firm, you can go and rent, but this is just a portion of it. So this is not covering, let's say, only electronic technology businesses. So this is in general, and I would like to keep it like that for now. So the business life cycle, the organizations go through different stages over their lifetime. A typical representation, they include startup, growth, maturity, and decline. So a startup is, startups, recently established businesses, which they are not having very much revenue. Then they go through a growth phase where they are rapidly increasing their revenue. Okay, they're generating profits. Many startups don't even generate profits for years. They will be running on incurring costs. There were many examples for that. They were not able to, of companies not able to, although they're having a lot of business, they were not even able to break even for the first 4 or 5 years. So this is the startup phase. It's not likely that organizations go and invest in real estate, although it might be possible. The growth phase is, we're talking about the company has become an established business. So this is where the company has become an established business. Like many startups even fail. They don't even continue to the growth phase. So when it's in the growth phase, it's an established business. This is where mainly many organizations start to invest in business. And then the company usually will keep growing until it reaches a point of what we call maturity. Maturity means that it has peaked in terms of its revenue. And after that, it usually goes across a curve, It either reinvents itself, in the sense comes back with new products, new product range, and then grows up the ladder again, or it goes in a decline and even exits or dies or disappears. A very famous example of this is, what are the reasons of decline? Many reasons. Maybe they didn't know what the market wants. Look at Nokia. Nokia failed because they failed to capitalize and see the importance of touch phones. This is just one example. There are many examples like that. Kodak failed because of that also. So when you're really not reinventing yourself, moving up with the market, selling the best product and continuing, you failed. So BlackBerry, you remember they grew up and it was very trendy, and then now RIM is still a company, it's still there, but it's nothing compared that what it was a few years back. So in the maturity phase, the business will be more reluctant to invest. Okay, they are risk averse because they still don't know where they are. They are peaking out and they want to take a decision on this. The life cycle costing. So the life cycle costing, we mentioned this several times before, is the process of determining all costs incidents to the planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance and disposition of a structure over time. So we talked about the whole life costing, or the cradle to grave. So it even includes the technique to establish the total cost of ownership. So this is a reason to consider. So let's say previously, for example, we were considering to invest in the new industrial area here. So when considering that option, you don't only consider the cost of constructing the building itself, you consider how much time you have to, how much money you have to spend before you are able to build. You consider the cost of architecture, you consider the cost of planning, you consider the cost of construction, you consider the cost of potential delays, the risks. So we're talking about the whole life cycle costing, and then you incorporate it, and then you compare it to what rental that you are making. Sometimes with the calculation, we did a calculation at that time to see, for example, when is the break-even point? When would it be, after how many years it would have made sense to invest in real estate and constructing it rather than continue renting. Okay, the total cost of ownership is a financial management strategy that accounts for the life to cradle measurement. The total cost of ownership is a measure expressed as currency per square meter foot associated with the facility. So it's you divide the cost divided by the facility area, and then you get this. The life cycle costs of a project, okay, they grow like this. These are the committed costs. So when you start the design, okay, the life cycle cost reduction opportunity are in the design, and then you find out that when you start with the design in mind, then you find out that, okay, you can change it. When the design reaches the construction phase, the ability to reduce the cost is gone already. So because the most of it happens during the design phase, and the design phase, it becomes flexible. When you are in utilization, then you will be the costs reduction opportunity will be close to zero or nil. The life cycle cost expended, of course, design is part of it, but design is only a small portion. And look at construction. Remember, we mentioned previously that usually the biggest life cycle cost is not in construction. And this is where many landlords fail to see. You find someone going and investing in a tower, paying 700, 800 million riyals, and thinking that this is it, I paid for this. No, the cost of operation over the lifetime of that project is going to be higher, because you're going to be running it for several years to come. You're going to be paying utilities for it. You're going to be paying for security, operations, maintenance, and all of this. And this is what the life cycle costs are the highest. They are during utilization. Investment analysis, we covered in the financial module several financial tools or investment tools that we can utilize. A simple one was the simple payback period. So payback period. We go and tell the boss, look, if you invest $200 million or 200 million riyals to fabricate and make our own factories rather than renting them out, within 10 years, we will be recovering the full costs, okay? And after 10 years, we will be having free rent rather than us paying this much amount per annum. Discounted cash flow analysis. This is where we discuss the time value of money, where we calculate at the moment what's the current dollar value of the projected. So that's why it's a discounted cash flow. So if we are having 1,000 or 1 million Riyal now versus having 1 million Riyal in the future, we prefer to take the 1 million Riyal now, because the 1 million Riyal in the future, if you take it to the net present value, the NPV, it's going to be less than that. We saw how to calculate it. So this is the discounted cash flow analysis. And there's risk analysis models, where risk is quantified and measured and can be used as a tool for decision making. So the time value of money, this is a baseline finance concept. We mentioned this earlier. Project classifications, project size, cash flow pattern, and life. Sometimes we might decide not to go for a project because it requires a big cash flow. Maybe it makes much more sense to rent, to buy, rather than to rent, because it's much cheaper. And I know that I'm going to use it for the next 20 years. So in all aspects, it makes more sense, but maybe I don't have access for liquidity. Maybe my cash flow, I prefer to use it somewhere else. Discounted and non-discounted analysis models. The intended use. So the intended use impacts everything from the physical side to the facility itself. Of course, construction, managing, and operating different properties is different. It's different when you're running a residential versus commercial versus industrial versus entertainment. For example, consider how office complexes, shopping malls, restaurants, and other commercial properties differ from industrial properties. Even among those properties, the priorities for managing a mall are very different from that of managing a hospital. So the intended use is an important factor. The economic cycle refers to the economy-wide fluctuations, whether an organization is in its period of contraction or expansion affects the real estate decision. We mentioned that earlier. If I'm Nokia, and many companies actually sold their real estate because they were shrinking and they needed cash flow, and then they sold their real estate. When you talked about the companies which reinvented themselves, Sony is one of the companies which has managed to survive by diversifying their business. Sony, at one point, they were a major producer of electronics, and they were very famous. You remember the Sony Walkman and other products, Sony TVs. They're still selling, but they're not a pioneer like they were before. But Sony at one point found out that they had extra cash, so they went and purchased movie-making companies. So now they have Sony Entertainment. And Sony, for example, focuses now on the PlayStation. So they are selecting one category in addition. So this is how they reinvented themselves. You have Sony Pictures, you have other investments which they have made, and for them to stay relevant. The age of property development is an important consideration. Newer properties tend to hold more value than older real estate. If I am investing in a real estate which is 5 years old or 1 year old, more likely that this real estate will increase its value, or at least will hold its value. Whereas if I go and purchase a 50-year-old building, which is going to be maybe demolished in the next 15 or 20 years. So there's a difference in this. So this is the phases of property development. The first phase is in a new developing area or neighborhood. Okay, so it will start growing till it goes to high value. At this, it will have peak value.
Okay.
Peak value and performance. So think of the pearl. The pearl started, or Lusail now. Lusail now still is in a growing phase. You can still find a cheaper real estate now because it's still empty. The pearl started like that. And then it continued growing till it reaches a point where most of it is filled. So it means that there is low vacancy. When there is low vacancy, it means that there's a huge demand for it. And this is where the real estate value will become highest. Then after that, it starts declining. So, and this phases take, of course, years. So think of the pearl 30, 40, 50 years from now, it will start declining. People will start leaving it. There will be high vacancy. Oliver, please don't open your mic if you don't have anything to say.
I'm trying to ask about the real estate.
We cannot hear you, Oliver. Your voice is very far.
Okay, so how about here?
Okay.
Yeah, my question is, you said the newer properties tend to hold more value than the older real estate. How about if the company is investing in land, for example? Because I think a land that is bought maybe somewhere after 5 years will appreciate. How about that?
Yeah. Land can be, of course, in terms of investment decision, maybe a better decision. But the focus here is on real estate, which we're going to use for our own utilization. So this is part of the, even the land itself goes through cycles. So if you go and buy a land, let's say today you go and buy a land in Al Khor, okay, maybe Al Khor is there, maybe on the Al Khor highway, maybe, or a place in Dukhan, let's say, or a little bit more to the north. And it doesn't have much value now because there is no demand for it. But let's say a few years down the line, they start investing there, people start going there, then the land will have a big demand. And when the land has big demand, then the value of the real estate will be at its peak. So this is what the financial model, the model here is mentioning, is that it starts at a low value and a new developing area or neighborhood. So if this is a newly developing area, let's say for land even, it's different if you're buying land in Lusail or in West Bay versus if you're buying land in Medina Shamal, for example, because now it's not like much developing and needed there. It continues till it reaches a certain high value, and then it grows to the maximum value when there is low vacancy. It means that, let's say, all the lands are in demand. When they started the new industrial area, it started like this. Many people didn't want to go there. Then there was demand. Then now it is more filled. Now, if you want to go get a land, of course, it's much more expensive than it was 10 years back. Yeah, so we said that it goes, yes, this is important. That's why I want to repeat it again. So we start with the first phase, it grows in value. And when it grows in value, there'll be less vacancy, okay? Then it starts deteriorating and it'll be high vacancy because people will leave it. For example, now look at Mushairib, Sofitel, that area. It is lower, maybe still some vacancy, but with not paying much rent. So this is the declining. Mushairib have already been demolished. And this is the fourth point of least value and renewal. So the real estate now in Mushairib, not in Mushairib, in Sofitel, if you're buying a building, it's nothing compared to what you're gonna buy in West Bay, where it's in a higher demand, better area. But 50, 60 years ago, buying property there held much more value than buying in the West Bay. West Bay was nothing. No one wanted to go there. Cyclical market conditions. Real estate prices rise and fall in reaction to the overall economic market. Of course, we are a part of the economy, and a growing economy, real estate will hold more value. People will rush to buy real estate and so on. So in economic downturns, demand decreases, larger volumes of floor space are available, and values fall. In strong economic periods, demand increases, real estate activity increases, and prices rise. So this is the typical example of supply and demand, and this is what's happening for a moment now. There's so much retail space now in the country. There is so much property space, so much residential space. So the values have declined. It wasn't like the case in 2006, 7, 8. It was like crazy. They had to make a law to limit the increase of rental on residential housing for 10%, because you could be signing a contract, and I was there at that time at let's say 6,000 riyal, and then the next year he can come and tell you I want 9 or 10, and there was nothing you could do about it. Otherwise they tell you to vacate. So supply and demand economic conditions. If demand exceeds supply, what will happen? If there's more demand than supply, then values increase. Vacancy rates decrease because everyone wants to go and rent. Prices may rise in certain areas because there's a shortage of space. Developers and lending banks, so at that time, like, it will be a very good, because they want to carry on it, and then they begin to build or remodel. Then it continues growing till supply meets demand. When supply meets demand, this is where the real estate prices peak. And then the vacancy rates are at the lowest. The balance between supply and demand has been reached. There is a saturation point of desired space, and excess of space may start to occur if markets get overbuilt. So this is what happened here in Doha. Now there's an overbuilding because new real estate developments take time to develop. So there's always a gap. So when you go and decide to build 3-4 years ago, where it was important, and there's another reason here, because projects get delayed. So some projects were commissioned, some of them commissioned more than 10 years ago. Until date, they haven't, or just now they have been opened up. An example is this QP commercial district, and many others are like that. So there's a gap between when you initiate. So when they made that project at that time, it made a lot of sense. Now it doesn't. So it's a cycle. That's why they call it an economic cycle. So maybe a few years down the line, the demand will come and rise again, and the same scenario will happen again. So that's why they call it the economic cycle. It's a cycle, up, down, up, down. When supply exceeds demand, values decrease, vacancy rates are high. This is where we are now. The market is overbuilt, and there's an oversupply of space. Incentives may be offered to induce tenants to take space. So incentives. So for example, now if you go and buy in Lusail or rent in Lusail, some real estate developers are willing even to give you 6 months free. Prices generally decline until the demand of space catches up. In some markets, green building are a differentiating factor and will attract more tenants than brown, less efficient buildings. So in a time of an economic downturn, everyone is looking to save money, and a greener building will mean a decrease in the utilities, and then they will be more attractive. Tell me, Ahmed.
Excuse me, Mr. Ba. The last thing you say, supply exceed demand, then value decrease. Here in Doha, in Qatar, actually, I didn't see this. For instance, if you take the apartments, okay, I am feeling there is too much supply, but still the value.
How long you have been in Doha, Ahmed?
Huh?
How long have you been?
Since 2014.
Since 2014. This is still a small cycle. Maybe, okay, it's a big cycle, but before they were even much higher. So they were even much higher. Believe me, in 2006, the real estate per square meter was much higher than it is now. Maybe from 2014 till now, not much has increased. Plus, in Doha, the market is not really free. The real estate developers are very limited in number, and they prefer to keep the real estate values more vacant rather than renting them out at a smaller thing. But still, I'm telling you, 2008, 9, 10, the real estate value was much higher than it is now, at least 20, 30%.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And even now they are trying to go around it, the real estate people, and how they go around it, they give you incentives. They don't tell you I reduced my rents, but they tell you, okay, come and take 3 months for free. This you didn't see it before. There was one point, Ahmed, previously where we were requested to pay, for example, some people started demanding crazy things. Like paying, okay, they used to tell you, okay, come and pay 2 years in advance and I'll give you some discount. And people did that because there was a huge demand and people wanted to fix. So they were paying 2 years in advance. Others even happened to me personally. They were asking for a 2-month safety deposit check. So they could demand whatever they want because there was not much properties available. The inflation rate was crazy. It was officially at 18%. And it was good old times. So the highest and best use, is called the highest and best use, describes the probable and legal use of a parcel of real estate that's physically possible, appropriately supported, and financially feasible. So this word, highest and best use, okay. When the market value of, so we're talking about what's the highest and best use of a property. So if I have a piece of land in West Bay, what is the highest and best use, for example, of it, depending on the zoning? Again, it's very important, but let's say there are no zoning requirements. Or let's say I'm building a property in Lusail. I go and decide, is the highest best use of this to make it as a factory, or to make it as a entertainment city, or to make it as a residential complex, or to make it as a mall? So the highest and best use tests are like, it has a legally permissible. So maybe the highest and best use is to make an entertainment city in West Bay. But is it legally permissible? Will the zoning laws allow that? Is it physically possible? Physically possible. So let's say like the highest and best use is to build a mall, but my real estate is, let's say, 10,000 square meters. Will that be enough as a footprint to make a considerable mall? Financially feasible. So this is, again, another test. So in the end, what's the financial feasibility of the project that we are considering? And then we have the maximum productive use. So these are the 4 elements in which we consider in terms of the highest and best use. An example, let's say there's a property, a house, which has a market value of $400,000, okay? And a site market value, so we bought it at $400,000, and a site market value as a commercial lot of $500,000. So if we demolish the house and sell it only as a property, we can get for it $500,000. But the demolition costs are $110,000. So is it better that we sell it as a house or we sell it as a property? In the first case, it's better that we sell it as a house, because if we sell it at a house, we will get $400,000. Whereas if we sell it as a property, it means that we have to pay the demolition costs. So it will become $510,000. So it means that we will lose. So we will be able to get $390,000. So, but if the demolition costs become reduced to $75,000, then it makes more sense for us to demolish it at $400,000, pay the $75,000, and then get an extra profit of $25,000 5,000. So we will sell it at 500,000 minus 75, we get 425,000. So these are considerations when we want to take decisions. Government regulations, laws differ from country to country. Even with a country, there are different regulations. Residential and commercial property use, ownership rights and limits, the regulations, the zoning, the tax regulations, the labor law issues, the building codes, all of these affect the investment decision that we're going to make. So if I'm building a school, I have to consider that in terms of accessibility, the exits, and so on, the health and safety regulations, the building code, the Qatar Civil Defense Code. Environmental regulations are very important. So if I want to do a certain fume emitting factor here in Qatar, probably I need to have a special clearance for it. And all of these affect the investment decision. So that's why you have in certain countries that these regulations, the environmental regulations, are very much relaxed. And for that, they become manufacturing hubs like China, let's say. Ownership rights and limits, as we mentioned earlier, like in Qatar, companies cannot buy anywhere they want, foreign companies. So there is a set of regulations. Standards, there are several standards that shape real estate decisions. One of the principal standard publications as facility management professionals and building owners and managers encounter is the ASTM, standard for whole building functionality and serviceability. So the ASTM started as the American Society of Testing and Material, I think, but then now it is not using that abbreviation and it has a bigger scope. So the ASTM code, not code we talk about, the standard is an important one. Addition to the ASTM, of course, the IFMA, and last time we mentioned the BOMA. BOMA is the Building Owners Management Association, are other resources for real estate standards. Financing. So the financing is the access for financing and the tools available for financing. Some countries have more developed financing tools. They provide more incentives. Others are more adamant on asking, for example, they ask for collateral. In Lebanon, it was much, or even now in Qatar itself, the requirement of getting a loan is much more strict than it was several years ago. The banks used to, I don't know how accurate is that, but it's something around that line. Like the banks used to finance 80% of your property, and including the development cost, the design cost, and so on. Now they have reduced it up to 65, 70%, and they tell you have to raise the 30%, and they will only cover the construction cost, the development cost, the design cost. You have to do it yourself. So you should be aware of the capitalization rates, the mortgage payments. There are different types of mortgages. The most common one is an amortized mortgage. An amortized mortgage is a mortgage where the bank takes a bigger percentage of their profit at the early payments. So let's say you took a mortgage rate for 1 million riyal, and you have a monthly payment of 10,000 riyal, where over the lifespan of this you have to pay. The bank will try to get more cut from the initial payments that you make rather than from the later payments. The impact of currency fluctuations, again, is a very important investment decision. If I'm an American company, I want to invest in Qatar. Now it's not a very big factor, but how risky is it for us in terms of the currency fluctuations? The interest rate risks. Oh, this is an important one. So sometimes the bank will come and tell you the interest rate is fixed, irrespective of the base rate. So every country will have a base rate. What's the base rate? The base rate is a rate which is developed by the central bank. In Qatar, in the States, it's done by the Federal Reserve Bank. So what's that? It's the rate at which the banks lend each other or the government lends the banks. So usually when they give you a mortgage here, when they tell you 6%, they usually mean by it the base rate, which they call it here the QIBOR, QIBOR. You don't need to know all of these things, but the idea is that the QIBOR can change. So let's say the government wants to induce the economy, they reduce the QIBOR. When they reduce the interest rates, people will be able to find that the loans are more affordable, more cash is thrown into the market. Whereas if it's high, then they want to withdraw the cash and they want to pull out the cash and to cool off the economy, let's say, and reduce the inflation rates. So the interest rate risks are a very important factor. A strategic plan developed and implement a real estate master plan. Remember, we talked about in the strategy how the organizational strategy on top will affect every aspect of the business, and one aspect would be the real estate management and the facility management. A strategic plan is an outline of the direction of the organization. So they're reiterating what we mentioned earlier. So it's a long term. So it outlines long significant plans and the methods and action by which the organization will operate. The goal of strategic planning is to develop strategic business-driven plans and then turn plans into action. Remember, we said how strategy becomes a tactic, and tactic is what drives action. A strategic facility plan is a long-term plan encompassing the entire. So this concept was identified earlier. They're just being reiterated here. We talked about the general strategic plan of the organization and how the strategic plan will reflect on the strategic facility plan. And the facility plan doesn't apply to strategic facility plan, doesn't apply to one property. It applies to all our properties. So an example, when Google went and decided that they want on a strategy, they want to become a green organization, it was reflected even in the day-to-day operations, in the data centers and so on, and then also on their facilities. So their facilities is that they had a strategic facility plan for all their entire portfolio of owned and or leased space that sets strategic facility goals based on the organization's strategic objectives. In addition to real estate strategy, strategic facility plans encompass planned FM services. A master plan, so we go from a strategic facility plan, then we go to a master plan. There's a connection issue, guys?
Mr. Baha, there's sometimes coming like a lagging or your voice will be like a robot. So maybe there's some internet connection with from your side.
Or maybe I'm an Android.
I don't know, but it's already sometimes coming like a lagging.
Yeah, give
No, it's disconnected, Mr. Baha.
Okay, you can hear me better now?
We hope so, yes.
Yeah.
So can you please repeat this slide, please? Can you repeat it again?
The whole session or this slide?
No. This is slide only.
Okay, so this slide is a repetitive of the repetition of the slide of the course that we consider the module on strategy, if you remember it. We talk about the strategy for the organization, strategic plan on top, and then it reflects on a strategy for facilities. So we call the strategic facility plan. And this is the strategic facility plan is that for the entire portfolio of owned and leased space. So I gave the example of Google. Let's say when Google decided on a big picture to go green and sustainable, they went and did it across their business entities, how they do their business, what they do with their business, the operations, the equipment that they utilize, and so on. And part of it was their facilities. So the facilities, they went through a strategic facility plan, and which is for their entire portfolio, whether they're renting out or they have their own properties. So from the strategic facility plan, you go into a master plan. So this goes from the top to the bottom. A master plan is for a specific site. So it's a specific property. Documents and the type, it traces the history, gives the reader an overview, and then what kind of space, square footage will be needed in the future. So this is a plan for the facility itself, and then it relates to what kind of space, square footage capabilities will be needed in the future. The tactical planning is where FM moves from the general to specific plans. A tactical plan is a detailed set of steps needed to accomplish a goal in a strategic plan. Tactical plans are short-range plans. So tactical plans is where we move from the general to specific. So tactical plan requires separate approval and funding. So strategic facility plan, we move to a master plan, and the master plan moves into a tactical plan. Yes, Ammar.
So that means tactical plan is more like day-to-day action, right?
Yes. So if you look at it, strategic facility plan, existing condition analysis, gap analysis. So let's say Google, when they wanted to decide and go green in their facilities, they did a gap analysis. Where are our properties and where we are? Recommendations for new building, cost projection, and these kind of things. Maybe it's better that we leave the properties. Master plan, when we talk about master. Yes?
For example, the BlackBerry. Which plan was that? Is it a tactical plan? For example, when they invented themselves to stay in business, but on a law, with other companies stopping them, they still managed to not to decline, but they managed to stay in business. Which plan did they apply?
Here we're talking about real estate. Now we're not talking about strategy anymore. We're not talking about the growth phase and the low phase. We're talking about the strategy relating to real estate itself. So if I was in BlackBerry, let's say, when they started declining, okay, sure that they have, let's say, if they had several offices across the world, they should have been reducing their offices. And as part of their strategy, so let's say BlackBerry found out, or let's say Nokia had offices everywhere and so on. So they took a decision at one point for sure that we need to start reducing our offices. So to reduce their offices, so this is their strategy plan for facility, to shrink their footprint, and probably, let's say, they gave themselves a target maybe. I'm just speculating, but I'm just thinking what does this mean in terms of application? I don't have insight into the history of each organization, but I'm just telling you how to think. And I'm giving examples for you so that you can relate to it. And a master plan. So the master plan, we're talking about site-specific plans. So if they decided to shut down and to move into smaller facilities, then they have looked at each facility itself. So the site-specific the infrastructure. So maybe let's say they had in the Middle East 4, 5, 6 properties, and then they go and compare which one they should keep based on their needs. Or even in Qatar, if let's say they have 2, 3, you see it sometimes with some companies, they will have 5, 6 branches in the country, and then you find them shutting down one, they're shutting down their footprint. Why they do that? Based on several considerations. Tactical plans, so these are the day-to-day operational plans, the building floor plans, the operating budget, and the occupancy charts. Facilities must not only support the mission of the organization, but should provide what has been described as the 5 R's. So facilities, so this is again, this here in terms of property is going back again to the strategy and the purpose of facility management. The right amount of space. So these are the 5 R's. Facilities should be the right amount of space. If I need 10,000 square meters, I need 10,000 square meters. I don't need 5. Is this my right need? Is this including my projection? At the right time. And this is what I mentioned earlier. So let's say if we need for our facility industrial units in 2 years, and then the facility management wasn't able to deliver that, and it's prolonged to the next 5 years, that it means that it failed. And then maybe I have to go and rent a place, put my equipment in it, and then when the construction is complete, bring it back. So this is lots of unnecessary costs. So we should provide the right amount of space at the right time for the right business groups at the right costs. Costs are also critical and important, with the right workplace tools. So if I move into offices, we mentioned that we need to collect the requirements and see what are the business needs. Facility condition assessment. When we go and inspect a property that we want to consider to rent, purchase, or so on, it involves a thorough field investigation and collection data to evaluate the condition of the following components. These include the architectural. Is it a nice building? Is it an accessible building? The structural, the roof, the civil, electrical, what kind of equipment is there? The plumbing, how old is the equipment? Is it well maintained? Accessibility and building code. This is like a proper building, and the building code compliance, we check it. An important tool that is when we are assessing buildings, and this is an important thing, is what we call a facility condition index, the FCI. Facility condition index is an accepted benchmark used by facility managers worldwide to rate the overall condition of facilities. The index is based on hard numbers and not opinions. So it takes the needed repairs and you divide it by the replacement value. So I go to a building A and I want to check its things. So I find a good building, but the FCI of it is 5%. So 5%, it means that only a small investment has to go into the repairs. And it's a good building which I can survive for. Whereas if I go to another building and then I have to pay another $500,000, $5 million, whereas the replacement value to go and get a new building will be 10 million, it means it's not a very good number for me to upkeep. So the FCI is an important tool. When we are in the 0 to 5%, we're in the excellent, 5 to 10 acceptable, and then poor, of course, because the cost of maintenance will be high. Typical sections of a real estate master plan. Yes, Sheikh.
Sir, I didn't get the replacement value. What does it imply?
Replacement value, or it's the existing value or replacement value. What does that mean? If I am Google and I wanted to check the condition assessment, shall I keep my existing facilities or go to more energy efficient ones? Okay. So if I have to pay 5 million for me to make the building compliant, whereas I can go to another complying building which is $10 million dollars. You understand what that means?
No, still not clear. Sorry. Yeah. The replacement value is the present value of the building.
Yes, or yes, the present value of the building
Without considering our programming or needed expenses.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a simple thing, you know. Look, when you understand how much you have to, just look at the chart here.
Yeah. Suppose we have one tower. So for because the AC is weak, we say for example we need to replace the chiller, which is costing 2 million. So
Okay.
2 million divided by the price of the building is 20 million.
Yeah.
2 million by 20 million.
Yes.
That's what FCI is. Okay, got it.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Okay, typical sections of a real estate master plan. So when you're talking about a real estate master plan, you're talking about an executive summary, the methodology, the functionality design. So we're talking about a real estate master plan. We're talking about a site-specific plan. It can include many items, such as the executive summary, the methodology, the statement of core organizational standards. How does strategy for this building relate to the overall facility maintenance strategy, and so on. The objectives and timelines. So we're going to implement, let's say we're going to make it a LEED complying building. So what's the objective for it? The timeline is going to be like 10 years. Sheikh, the replacement value, I'm not sure if it's divided by 10 million or divided by the total value of the, what it means is that if it was like complete, how much it will cost. So that I will verify after the break, okay?
Okay.
But the important principle is that you select a building when you are selecting an option, is that if it's within the 5% range, it means it's a good building. Whereas if it's bigger than that, it means that you have to pay more cost than the replacement value. I would tend to think that the replacement value is the, let's say you have a building, which you need a building with a certain requirement, okay? That building, if you want to get it ready, you have to pay 25 million riyal, okay? Whereas the other building, maybe you need to get that building and pay 2 million riyal. So you divide 2 by 20 or 2 by 25. This is what I have to check out. The real estate profitability, support services, the external factors which are governing our decision for a master plan, the updates and revisions. Let me see, where are we? Just give me a second. Sorry, guys. 18 of 42. So let us take a 10-minute break, please. Hello.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Let's be back here by 8:20, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back. You with me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So regarding the facility condition index, as I said later, it's the total replacement cost of the building. It means if I want to get my building compliant to the latest requirements, if let's say I have to go outside the same building, I have to go and pay 120 million riyal. Whereas the repairs on the existing building, for me to reach it to that value, will be 3 million. So I divide 3 by 120 and I get the percentage of the FCI. When we are doing a master planning, who are the stakeholders? So the definition of stakeholders, we defined it earlier, we're going to define it again. So the stakeholders are any people, organizations, entities, or group of those who are affected directly or indirectly with our decisions. This is a general definition of a stakeholder, whether we're considering project management, real estate, master planning, it's the same thing. So there are usually key stakeholders, which are important people where their decisions, and there are other stakeholders as well. So stakeholders include the business owners as a key stakeholder, suppliers, board members, contractors, employees, regulatory authorities. If I'm constructing a factory in the industrial area, the building owner, the industrial area, municipality, the civil defense, all of those are stakeholders. Probably Ashghal is a stakeholder. Let's say if I have a big Kahrama as a stakeholder, the role with Kahrama can change. Let's say if it's a huge factory which demands a huge load, then Kahrama will become a key stakeholder. It's important whenever you're considering decisions to include your stakeholders' view on it. Stakeholder, why to involve them in planning? You can identify a shared vision. You can avoid problems down the line. You can assist with identification of feasible options, define requirements, constraints, and risks. So let's say I want to have a very high power intensive plant. I just cannot go and start planning commission without taking the consent of Kahrama, who are a primary stakeholder. Do they have the enough power to fulfill my needs? Yes or no? Maybe if I involve them in the planning, they can help to formulate creative solutions. Maybe they tell me, come shift here, or we will construct a certain thing for you there. Test acceptability of recommendations and solutions, or you can tell them that this is a high power intensive. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have combined power, but you need to allow me to that. I'll take half of it from you, half I'll generate my own power. And this is just as an example. So it's important to mention that stakeholder involvement is needed, and it will make your life easier. Segmenting master planning stakeholders. So not all stakeholders are equally important. Situation specifics will determine exactly which stakeholders fit into each of the three categories. We have key, primary, and secondary stakeholders. When to involve appropriate stakeholders should be involved either at the onset or early on. So stakeholder, that's why if you remember in project management, there's a stakeholder management in project management. There's a stakeholder management plan. And the stakeholder management also applies if I'm making a development, and that development should be involved at the early stages. Let's say if it's near a residential area and I don't involve those stakeholders early on, and then when I complete the construction and I want to do the inauguration, and then I end up having them coming and protesting, then I wouldn't have done it in the required manner. Identifying and analyzing stakeholder requirements is very important. Like, what are the stakeholders looking for? what are their interests, what are their needs, what are their expectations. If I'm making a hospital, let's say, I need to understand what are the stakeholder requirements. Let's say the patients are there. So if I'm making a hospital in Dukhan, let's say, would the Doha people go there? This is a question. So stakeholder requirements are as diverse as the individuals and stakeholder groups. Even in terms of the clients themselves, they will have different needs, different requirements. They're not also always the same. Activities in the master planning process: we validate the existing records, review the strategic plan for the entire organization and the strategic facility plan. Again, the concept of strategy is coming again. We start with the general strategy for the organization, strategic facility plan, and then a master plan, which is site specific. Identify and enlist stakeholders to participate in the real estate master planning process. Secure executive approval and meet with the stakeholders. Site and space management. Site refers to the property and related rights, the structures and beyond. So when we're talking about a site, we're talking about everything on the property. So we have space describes an enclosed area. So space is something indoors. Space may be a building, a floor, or any defined area in a building interior. So it can be the so-and-so floor, or it can be the cafeteria space in slide floor number 3. So this is a space. Tactical. So the space management has both tactical and bottom line aspects. When we're talking about tactical, we're talking about effectiveness. So maximizing flexibility to meet ongoing facility needs. So our role as facility managers is to manage the space, how to best utilize the space. We talked about managing the property itself. Now we're moving to the managing the space inside that property. So when we're considering it, we're considering the maximum flexibility, we're considering what affects employee working conditions and productivity. Would it be effective if I put the lounging area on the 15th floor, where every time they have to go up and down for them to do, let's say, the photocopy room somewhere, or it's better to keep it inside the working zone? It reduces the need to acquire or procure additional space. The bottom line is, when we talk about bottom line, we're talking about financials. So bottom line is by controlling expenses, providing measurable financial benefits, and increasing the market value of the real estate. So what I do with the building will definitely affect its market value. If I upgrade it or if I downgrade it, that's going to reflect on the market value of it. Managing space as an asset. So space should be considered as an asset. The building itself, buildings with waste space, you are wasting assets. Means that there was some wrong planning or improper way to look at this. Assets may include investments and receivables and inventory, in addition to physical plant investments. And effective space management will improve the life and performance of facilities and furniture, fixture, and equipment, will increase the productivity of staff, will minimize the operating costs, will provide valuable information, historical and current data, and future estimates that can be used in the organizational and strategic plans. So space requirements, identifying what the organizations need. If you are wondering, there's a lot of similarities between what we are covering now and we covered earlier regarding the design of space and how to utilize it. It's being like repeated again. This is the IFMA case, because each specific module is considered as a reference on its own. So effective space management is grounded in forecasting and planning. When we talk about strategy, we need to be able to forecast. We need to understand, are we a growing organization? What's the plan of the business? The business wants to go and become global business and have offices in 100 countries, or it wants to be only regional. These things we need to understand. And regarding my strategy, let's say in Qatar, I'm having a manufacturing plant for Procter & Gamble. Am I having a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan to increase the number of factories? So when I go and select a land in the new industrial area, rather than selecting it only for this requirement, I select a land which can accommodate for future growth. This is very important. So forecasting relates to predictions based on data assessment and analysis. It involves identifying new space requirements and projecting the need for reallocation, disposal of unneeded space, and the repurposing of space. So when we talk about forecasting, we talk about prediction based on data assessment and feedback, and what are the new space requirements and the repurposing of space. So we are utilizing this space for offices. Probably it will be much useful if we make it into meeting rooms. Planning is to meeting the forecasted needs. So how am I going to meet the forecasting needs? What's the plan? Now I understand that we're a growing organization and we're going to have 3 more offices in Qatar. So what's my plan? How will I tackle it? Or now I have an office which accommodates 100 people. I'm gonna need additional 2 offices. What's the plan? Shall I focus on finding offices in the same area, or shall I look at different areas depending on other business needs? It encompasses expansion or contraction in an industry or field, the organization, and the workforce. Space forecasting has basic strategies, whether to own or to lease. We covered these earlier. Again, a decision to purchase or to lease is depending on several factors, like how long we're going to own the building. So let's say if I'm just coming to Qatar to execute a project for 5 years and leave, it wouldn't make sense for me to buy property. If I need better flexibility, it wouldn't make sense, for example, to go and rent into serviced offices. Or the other side, let's say I'm a business which has been established in Qatar for the last 50, 60 years, and I have the cash. Why not? I go and own. I'm investing in real estate. I'm utilizing my cash flow from the business to acquire properties that will increase the value of my company. The identification of space requirements, the keyword that comes here, and we are collecting requirements, is called programming. Again, it's a concept which has been repeated over and over again. Programming means collecting requirements. So space programming, it means the collecting the requirements of space, determining the user needs for the amount and configuration features of physical space based on user role or business unit department needs. The finance team needs a certain kind of office arrangement. The general manager needs, like this is an example, needs a certain meeting rooms. The IT needs a certain space. The different departments, like one department needs separate office spaces. So the role also, let's say if I have 2, 3 project directors, they need to be in private offices. We need to allocate that for them, and so on. There are different aspects of space programming. The 2 main are the qualitative and the quantitative. So these are the 2 aspects. So the qualitative, what kind of quality of space? I need an open space. Let's say I have a design firm. I need a colorful space that will allow the people to meet and talk. Or I need quantitative. Quantitative is how much of that I need. So the quality of space differs. The space planning transforms the latent space program into a graphic floor plan. So space programming gets translated into a graphic format. Tools for space planning. So there are tools with space planning. An adjacency diagram is one of those. An adjacency diagram documents critical physical proximities of organizational groups, equipment, or support functions. So let's say the finance, just theoretically, let's say the finance should be near to the admin. Engineering should be near to project management. So this is an adjacency diagram. So even this is like when I'm brainstorming for the office, look at this, for example. I'm creating what needs to be next to what. So this is the bubble diagram. So the bubble diagram is a type of adjacency diagram. It's a type of an adjacency diagram that illustrates primary and secondary adjacencies between major work groups. So this is like a common work area. There should be a break room here and so on. So it's a schematic diagram, a sketch. One-to-one assessment diagram, assignment diagram. After everything is done and you have done the actual diagram like this one, the one on the previous picture, then you slide, you see like this goes to Mr. X, this goes to Mr. Y, this goes to Madam Z, and so on. So this is a one-to-one assignment diagram. It's a diagram. A block diagram or a blocking plan illustrates how multiple groups or departments will fit onto a given floor of a building. So the block diagram shows the full building, and on the first floor I have finance. On the second floor I have meeting or engineering, and on the roof I have management. A stack plan or a stack diagram is a vertical section drawn through a building showing which organizational groups will occupy which floors. This is the floor plan. The block diagram is the block diagram within the plan. This is the one I'm talking about, was a stack diagram. So it's talking about the vertical arrangement. The vertical relationships between the groups in a multiple story building are shown. Acquisition and divestiture of real estate can dramatically affect the financial stability of an organization. Real estate is expensive. Real estate has a huge toll on the organization, and can be, some companies were saved financially because they had real estate. So let's say there was a downturn, and then they have invested 10, 15 years ago in purchasing their own properties. They can go and encash these properties, and that might save the company with the additional revenue that they have. Some companies' businesses have been destroyed, but they still managed to upkeep it because of investment in real estate that they had. So facility management of real estate acquisition and divestiture are related. Some companies manage to stay more competitive because they don't have an operational cost of renting it. So company A was renting the mall, whereas company B has already acquired the mall and doesn't have and paid off the loan, and that doesn't have this. So company which owns the mall will be more competitive even in operations because they don't have these costs. Facility management aspects of real estate acquisition. So how is the facility management involved? Of course, facility management is involved in the due diligence. So when they want, the management wants to purchase a property, they send the facility management to do an assessment. They're also involved in the site selection. So where do we go? They go and select. And the leasing, what kind of contract we make. Exit strategies means that, okay, when we finish, we're going to terminate the contract. We're going to demolish the building, which we do this. Property divestiture. Divestiture means like I am releasing it back or selling it. And full portfolio management. Due diligence refers to the inspection and investigation of a property and the surrounding area before an organization makes the financial decision whether to commit to the site and move forward with a purchase or lease transaction. So the purchase option, purchase versus lease option, and the option of the purchase of real estate provides better control of the real estate. When you buy something, of course, you have better control over it. All the improvements or whatever, you don't need to go to anyone. The other option is that when we purchase it for our own, there are other options where we can do it with a development partner. So we go and co-invest in it, and then we share the capital investment with the partner. The lease options, these are two basic options. The lease options are diverse. Okay, you can, let's go with the common things. Okay, a lease for short term. Lease for short term results in higher rental but fulfills organizational need for short term occupancy. This is what the serviced offices offer. Serviced offices, you can go and rent it for a month. So it just provides you, of course, it's going to be more expensive, but it provides you with much better flexibility. Lease for a long term. In order for us, it will provide better stability for us to secure ourselves. It will provide us for better rates. So let's say I want to have a factory. I can go and lease it from the property owner for the next 30 years. I make a contract like that. Leased with no capital funds for upfit. So when let's say I want customized to a certain thing, but I will not pay capital. I will let the developer or the landlord provide me with my office requirements, provide me with everything in the need. It saves me allows me to save the cash up front, but of course I will have to pay a higher fee because they're gonna charge me for that. And the other extreme is to the lease to obtain the lowest possible rent, is when the organization provides some or all of the upfitments funds to minimize the rent. Similar when you want to rent a flat. If you go and rent a furnished apartment, there is no capital outfit. You don't need to go and buy furniture, okay? You're gonna pay more, but you don't need to pay cash. Whereas the lease for the lowest rent, you know, they say semi-furnished or furnished. So semi-furnished, it means that the basics are done for the ACs. Even you can go and rent a property which has no ACs or whatever. You will get the cheapest rent, but your capital requirement will increase. Lease with the purchase option. So these kind of lease are there. So this allows the organization to defer capital purchase to some future date at a specific price. So you say that, okay, I'm going to rent from you each year. I'm going to pay 1 million riyal. And after 10 years, I will have the option to purchase the whole property by shelling out another 10 million riyal. Ground lease is a long-term lease for the land only, allows the organization to own capital improvements made to property and amortize capital investments over them. So the ground lease, I rent from someone land. And again, it's a common thing here. And then I build my own warehouse, let's say. Build to suit, an organization desires not to own property, but pays property owner rent to cover investment and then leases a property. Same story as this, like build to suit. I am IKEA. I have a special requirement for my building. I go and contract with a developer. I tell him, look, build for me this place with these specifications, these requirements, and I'm going to rent it from you for 30 years at these rates. Another option is called the sale leaseback option. A sale lease back. Let's say I'm a bank and a real estate company. I have a company and I have my own offices and I'm sitting in them. All of my offices are occupied, and then I need cash. Okay, I need cash. There is one option. I go to some owner or developer. I tell him, look, I want to sell the building at $500 million real, 500 million real. Okay, and buy it from me, and I will pay you rent as long as I stay in the building at 2 million per annum, let's say. So a sale lease back is that the seller sells it for the buyer and then he leases it out for them. So this is what's called a sale lease back option. Advantages of purchasing or leasing. So purchasing provides more flexibility. We have full control of the property. The property can appreciate in value. So sometimes the best decision that you make will be the real estate. Maybe the business will not even be closed. So some companies will go this, and after 10 years, whatever property they had, it has exploded in value. Owned property life cycle costs are generally less than leasing. Of course, when you buy something, more likely that the total life cycle cost of this will be less. The leasing is advantage. You preserve capital. You allow quick in, quick out. It doesn't make sense if you want to use a building for a 2-3 year project to go and buy it and go out of the country and sell it out. And leasing also provides entry into state-of-the-art facilities. I need to go into a posh area. There is no need for me and get a quick tower. I don't need to go and construct my tower, wait 5-6 years and so on. Someone else have done it for me. I just need to lease it. Leasing provides the ability to negotiate terms. Service charge allocations. Service charges are what facility maintenance can be one of those. Service charges enable facility management to recover costs incurred in the operational management of a property from tenants. Two widely common methods are the base rent method and the cost model. So like per head count, see. So the base rent method. So let's say I have a mall and there are tenants inside, and I tell them you're gonna pay rent and pay also the service charge. So per square meter, you're gonna have this much rent and this much as a service charge per month or per annum. The cost model is that I tell them you have to pay, for example, per square meter this much, or it can be per head count. So usually this is usually done for internal financing. Internal financing, let's say I have a business and she's having 5 different departments, 5 different divisions, each of them having a separate profit and loss sheet. I can allocate the cost of the service inside the office per head. So department A is having 50 people in the building, and the other people are having 20. I do it proportional to the number of people. Or I can do it per square meter, how much area they occupy. There are different types of commercial leases. There is a gross lease, which means a full service lease, modified gross lease, net lease, double net lease, triple net lease. Okay. So the gross lease, the triple net lease is the gross lease is a full service lease, is a modified lease. The net lease is, so let us look at them here. So net lease is one where the lessee, the person who's borrowing the asset, pays the rent to the lessor after reducing the expenses to be paid for maintenance, taxes, insurance, and repair of the asset. Okay. So expenses is very clear here, who pays what. So in a single net lease, the tenant pays the rent plus property tax, and the owner pays for maintenance and other operating expenses of the premises. In a double net lease, the tenant pays the rent, proportionate property tax, proportionate property insurance. The triple net lease is that the tenant pays for rent, property tax, insurances, common area maintenance, repairing expenses. The owner pays nothing. So it starts while the single net lease, they pay less. In the triple net lease, they pay more. And usually when they are having a triple net lease, the rates will be less because they will have to take care of the rest of the things. A revenue-based lease, the revenue-based lease is a percentage of the revenue lease. This is a very common model with malls and retail outlets where they share the revenue. And this has been done here in several places, and it has been done, for example, the retailers are not making money from a certain outlet, and the landlord doesn't want them to go out. So he goes and tells them, okay, you stay, you pay a minimal amount of rent, and whatever revenue you generate, we will share at this percentage. Index lease, you can link your lease to a certain index. So such as you can link it to the real estate index of the country, the consumer price index of the country, and these are usually publicly published indexes. You can link it to that. A step lease is where predefined specific amounts over term. So when it was heated regarding the real estate in Qatar, this was a common thing, is that, let's say you make a step lease. I once signed one for a workshop here like that. Like the first 2 years, I pay you this much, and the year 3 onwards, I pay you this much. So it's a step lease. A green lease is sustainability elements are put into the green negotiations. It's a lease where the tenant and the owner agree on terms which they both benefit sustainability. Basic components in a lease agreement. Lease agreements include many things. You must have signed a lease agreement for your own property at some point. So they include certain things such as bankruptcy, insurance, improvement and alterations. Let's say, okay, if there are improvement and alterations, you're not allowed to do so unless you get the written consent of the landlord. They also include the floor measurements, demised property, conveyance of an interest. So there are many things. So sometimes some contracts allow you to sublet, other contracts don't allow you to sublet. They include the maintenance responsibility, who does the maintenance of the common areas, what's the scope of the lease agreement, basically. This is including regarding the insurance, who pays what, who does what, and maybe when you finish, who takes care of returning the property to the original condition. Lease accounting. Under current accounting principles, so a lease can be considered, usually it's considered as an operating lease. It means that this will go from your operational costs. But there is another model where you can have a capitalized lease. All of these will have different impacts on the profitability, how it's recorded, on the depreciation, how it's done. No need for you to go into the details into this, but you need to know that they can have a capitalized lease versus an operated lease. A capitalized lease is like we're dealing the lease such as a purchase of a property. Exit strategies. So when we are finished with our lease, what shall we do? One of them will be subletting, so sublet to someone else, or assignment to someone else. Termination, lease buyout, where someone, this was common here in Qatar, So someone will go and pay you for the lease. So you are renting a restaurant in a prominent location, and then someone will pay you to vacate, and he will take over. Decommissioning space involves activities such as space restoration, asset disposition, cable removal. Common thing when you vacate a place that you are supposed to return it to its original condition, as per several contracts. And usually when vacating a leased office space, a warehouse, and so on, the term decommissioning refers to administrative and technical actions to restore the leased space to the conditions specified by the landlord. Space must be returned to the landlord to enable full vacancy, meeting all back-end requirements. So sometimes the contract will say, whatever you do, you build on that facility, you should not demolish. It will be the transfer to the owner. And other contracts say, no, you should demolish everything and return it back to the original condition. Portfolio management. Investors put money into real estate for one of two reasons. A, they want the property for their organization's operational use. B, they expect to make money by leasing the property or subsequently selling it. So there are strategic and operational activities to consider. Portfolio management strategic activities include alternate space strategies, strategic asset planning and management, property tax strategies. This is a common thing, where you buy property to reduce your taxes. Operational activities encompass the day-to-day functional tasks. So when you are managing a portfolio, you are looking at it strategically. Shall I buy in this area? Shall I sell in that area? Shall I buy to save tax here? Shall I, now is the best for this development, it's the best time to sell, and so on. Operational activities encompass the day-to-day functional tasks and managing the specifics of all properties. Tools are required to assess how the real estate portfolio meet the needs. So another aspect is that when I'm purchasing and managing the portfolio of a company, let's say, I always give the example, Google, let's say, or Uber wants to buy their own facilities and to have a vehicle fit out center in every country. So part of the portfolio management is why it is done. These companies aren't doing it just for the investment's sake. They're doing it mainly to satisfy their operational needs and independence. Portfolio organizations depend on timely, accurate, and comprehensive information about the performance of their assets. Portfolio measurement records typical characteristics, define individual items as owned, leased, or subleased. So when you are managing a portfolio, you need to know what's the status of each building. Define property categories, building structures and land, track the cost performance data, facilitate. So there are software which can handle this, the integrated, for example, IWMS, the integrated workplace management system, which, or some CFM software allow you to create a portfolio in which you can, or real estate specific softwares which tell you to manage, allow you to manage the portfolio and to track costs, performance data, what are the electricity bills over the last 10 years, raise alarms whenever there's an anomaly, facilitate a wide range of performance data, use a graphical tool to display real estate in an entirety or a specific data. Benefits to FM include comprehensive tracking, robust root cause analysis, reduced departmental costs. So basically this is saying that by maintaining portfolio management records, our visibility will improve. Yes, Ammar.
You talk about the CFM system or CFM software. I used CFM when I was working with Sidra Hospital, but it was only just to create work request for maintenance, for electrical issue, for the several complaints. we didn't also have this portfolio management.
I
Only
said
just to create work. We use it just to create work request.
Okay, so we will cover in the next module the different softwares that can be utilized. There is something called the Integrated Workplace Management System, the IWMS, which covers a broader area of the facilities. Again, even the CFM system, which you were using, some use it to just create, depends on the system. Some use it as a work order creation tool. Others use it as a full CRM. It's integrated with their CRM. All the expenses, everything are recorded there. Others utilize it as an asset management as well. Some have a separate software for the asset management. So these kind of things are, can you write the name of this software for FM? Which software? We will be covering this. I will not go into specific brands of software. I cover but you can just now go and Google Integrated Workplace Management Systems, IWMS. You can go and there are many in the market which you can select from. So we cover the principles of the software, which can include some portfolio management modules, depending on the type of software that you have. It's like the CRM systems. CRM systems, you can add modules to them that cover your sales, that cover your accounting, and so on. So this was the last item. There will be a separate session next time regarding the technology and the software and the building information modeling. We see like there is some software which links the building from the point. So BIM, building information modeling, starts from the conceptual design to the fabrication design to the shop drawing to the construction drawings to the as-built drawings and to the asset management. So the whole cycle is covered in that. Autodesk is good in that, of course, and there are many others. Which is the highest? And if you don't have questions, I will go into the answering these questions. So which highest and best use would assess whether a 3,700 meter square single-story warehouse fits for a given site?
Physically possible? Physically.
Yes, you are right. Which of the following standards would a facility manager most likely use when assigning floor area for occupant groups and setting up a chargeback for use of space?
Alpha.
Yes.
ASTMA.
Yes, the ASTM and the IFMA standards. What typically happens when a loan is amortized?
B.
No, an amortized loan is,
Majority of the early payments are for interest.
yes, early payments are for the bank. When identifying stakeholder requirements, stakeholder would be stockholders, not stakeholders, stockholders. So as a stakeholder, huh?
So
What?
Of course,
Hmm?
profit only.
Profit.
They
So this is
profit
which
only.
question?
influence. D. Financial group.
Financial stability,
Huh?
profitability.
D. Delta. Financial problem.
Of course, stockholders don't care what you do with your organization. They want to see money, money, money. Which of the following statements best describes a facility condition assessment? Is it the description of necessary steps to move from a current state to a desired future state? Or is it a report of the current state of the building, including costs to correct deficiencies? Or it's a 2 to 5 year facility plan encompassing owned and or leased space? Or it's a process to determine the cost of a building over its lifetime in present value terms?
D.
D.
Delta?
D.
Better.
Delta?
Bravo, bravo. Bravo.
So
B.
it is B. It's a
B.
facility condition assessment. You go and check a facility
Because
and you create a report.
FCA, right? FCA.
Yeah, the FCI is a tool for facility condition assessment. It's a tool.
Yeah. Okay.
So you go to a building and you check where it is and what does it cost to repair the
cost
deficiencies.
and deficiencies.
During which organizational life cycle stage in which an organization would be mostly risk averse in real estate decisions?
Maturity, Charles.
This is in
Integrity.
maturity.
Yeah.
Maturity.
Maturity.
A lease with a purchase option. A lease with a purchase option is most appropriate when the organization cannot take advantages of tax plans.
The initial capital. B.
Initial capital.
B. Initial capital.
Lack of initial capital. B.
Yeah, delta. Which of the following would be a characteristic of space planning?
Charles. C's reallocation of unneeded spaces.
Okay.
Delta.
Huh?
Delta.
Delta.
Provision accommodate growth.
Prevention accommodate the growth.
This is the most
D.
correct one out of those.
D. Yeah.
Space programming. What is space programming?
Collection of requirements.
Okay. So programming helps to determine what?
Is from
Kind of space needed.
B. What
Space
kind of
needed.
space is
B. B.
needed?
What kind of space needed? B. B. B.
Yes. So we are collecting the requirements to understand that. Any questions?
Sir, what would be our next module?
Technology. This is the last one.
So actually we missed some model, like because actually we have joined in model number 8 from 8. Is it any possibility to reback our models 1, 2, 3 like that?
Yeah, of course, but you have to join another class batch, not this batch.
Okay, sir. Because we joined on 8th batch actually. Sorry, 8th.
Yeah, sure you will get this, but talk to the guys and they will tell you when there's a next batch.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone?
What?
Ahmad, you have a question?
Yes. Yes. In Qatar here, Mr. Baha, what is your expectation for the real estate? Is it flourishing, blooming, or coming to stagnation?
No, now it's not flourishing. People are not investing in it now.
Not flourishing. So it is coming stable or stagnation?
There's oversupply now.
Oversupply, so not flourishing.
Lot of empty offices, lot of empty plots.
Another question, Mr. Baha, can you give us sample for instance, for contract, facility management contract sample?
No, this is not part of the scope here. I don't have one part of this.
Even as a learning or an example, not there? Thank you.
You can talk to, I don't know. I don't have a specific sample that I can share with you.
Yeah, no any standard for instance, like lease or something, or contract for
What
renting.
you want a lease or you want what?
No, I want a standard contract for facility management.
See, it depends on the scope of facility management that you're talking about. You're talking about hard services, you're talking about soft services. What are you talking about?
Yes, for instance, building, residential building.
That
or
we can,
apartment.
I don't have at the moment ones which I can share. The ones that I have are ones for my clients, and there are some confidentiality. But I don't have them part of this. You can Google and see what you can get online. And if you need help, probably I'll let someone talk to you from my team.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All
Okay.
Anything else?
No, thank you, sir.
Nothing. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good.